Why was I crazy enough to do a podcast?
Why were you crazy enough to do a podcast?
It was kind of born out of conversations I was having with colleagues and friends at the time. Still am, actually, to be honest. And then Caroline, who's the hypnotherapist who appears on the podcast, I was talking to her. She obviously runs a practice, and she was saying about how many guys she was seeing. And then I guess it got me kind of thinking, it all spirals, doesn't it? But it got me thinking about the Hauraki audience and how it is male skewed. And so the stats were that rates of anxiety and depression went up 25% over the COVID period. More women are diagnosed with depression, but it's the men, it's both, but it's the men who are more likely to take their own lives. So I guess I was just thinking, I've got an audience to talk to. You can throw out the numbers and the telephone lines and websites to go to, but I kind of think if you have something tangible to listen to, I mean, you may not take the advice of someone who's on the end of the phone who you don't know, but you might listen to someone who you respect and see their take on things, and then you might want to actually put into practice what they're saying as opposed to advice from a stranger. I don't know, it just felt more tangible to have a resource for people to listen to and to connect with.
Yeah, and we look at the kind of people that come on this podcast.
Yeah.
They're people that you would call them celebrities, right? They're quite well known in our sphere, our media sphere.
Yes.
Do you think, for a lot of those people, was it quite hard for them to come on the show like that and give themselves?
It is kind of hard when you say, hey, I'm doing a podcast called Mental as Anything, do you want to come on? And people have got to get a little bit vulnerable, you know what I mean? So that can be confronting for a lot of people. But what I actually found quite fascinating, so say Lee Hart, for example, I loved that chat because the producer at the time said, oh yeah, but can you get underneath the Lee Hartness of it all? Will you really get to him? Yeah. And he was so happy to be open and vulnerable and go behind what we know of him. Like, it was one of my favourite episodes because he was really real.
And time is really, whether you call it 7 stages of grief, 13 or 9 or 100 or 14, 13 herbs and spices, 11, whatever. It's just time, and some people take longer or some will take less, but you will feel better.
And further down the track, at least.
And further down the track, and again and again. And some people, within 6 months of a brand new relationship, and some aren't. There's no right or wrong.
And then you had someone like Paddy Gower, who, because I've known Lee Hart for, got a better part of 20 years. Paddy Gower, I'd never met before. Well, no, I'd met him a couple of times, but I didn't know him, you know what I mean? And he was really happy just right off the bat to go there and go deep and be really vulnerable and just let a lot of it out. And I don't know, I felt quite proud of that, really quite, thanks. It was really generous with what he had to share.
My alcoholism is a crutch that I picked up when I was about 16 years old because of the way that I looked to help, get me through.
Yeah.
And this is a crutch that has now stayed with me for 30 years. And I now can't do without this crutch.
And I think he had done that TV show, the getting smashed live on telly and then telling everyone he had stopped drinking. But this was like his first chat really publicly as to where he was 2 years on. So yeah, I kind of felt a little bit honoured about that actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a little more challenging maybe to get guests on, but I'm glad that people are starting to feel more comfortable to do that kind of thing. I did learn that I think struggle and success can exist in the same breath, if you know what I mean. Like, it's maybe they got to where they were because they'd gone through struggle and had the tenacity and the resilience to get through it, or that success might have amplified the struggle. Like Paddy Gower was saying at the top of his game, he had a mental breakdown. So it can hit anywhere, anytime, right?
What's the feedback been from listeners? Has it been really good? Have people kind of got in touch and said, wow, this is really cool?
That's the payoff, eh? I remember being in Dunedin after the first season was launched for the Beer Fest, and usually I get, drunken punters coming up and chatting music and chewing my ear off about records and stuff. And the main thing they talked about was the podcast, which was so choice. There was one guy who said he was a teacher and he made his students listen to it because there were no resources really down there, and he just thought it was a really good, way for them to, get information and feel not so isolated. Because we are a little bit isolated, aren't we, in New Zealand, just away from everyone else. And yeah, it is that thing, I think, honesty, connecting people. I think if like everyone's got something to carry, and it's really easy to judge. I think, you know, you might see some guy in the, I don't know, queue at the gas station who's being impatient and being a real dick, and you get angry, and then, you know, you don't know that maybe he's just found out his dad's dying of cancer or something. I think it just lets you maybe take more patience and care with other people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess we're quite good at masking as Kiwis, aren't we?
And that's it. And I think, I mean, we're really lucky that that conversation's starting to come around a little bit. You know, you've got your, like John Kerwin, obviously, who kind of brought it to the forefront, Mike King, who's doing great things. And then when Jono on the podcast, I don't know if you heard it, when he said, you know, he's out there crying on national telly because he's been to the funeral of his best friend who took his own life.
You mentioned my friend Tim who passed away, and as we spoke about him on the telly show years and years ago, and there's parts of me was like, I could have been a lot better than I was, you know, as a friend.
And the fact that he went on telly and did that, I don't think he was aware, but after that, calls to Lifeline spiked.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's, and he just thought he did it in front of a live studio audience and thought, oh God, you know, everyone thought I was nuts. Why did I do that? Bring the party down, and didn't realise the effect. What I did learn, and going back to that question, I reckon is it's really hard to be a listener. So in order for people to have those conversations, they need to have the right listener and not someone saying, oh, you'll be right, or oh, everyone goes through that, you know, to actually listen to someone. And I'm not very good at that because I'm used to being in radio and filling in that radio silence and wanting to connect maybe and empathise and say, oh yeah, me too, instead of just shutting up. So I had to really focus when I was doing the podcast and make sure that I was listening and not jumping in and trying to control that narrative. So that's the other side of the coin. Yes, tell people to, you know, to be brave and to talk. But on the other side, learning to listen is a massive skill that I think we probably should encourage more.